Every morning at 8:47 a.m., Sarah ordered the same coffee and sat at the same corner table, pretending to read her book while stealing glances across the cafe. What she didn't know was that every morning at 8:52 a.m., her ex-husband Mike did exactly the same thing, sitting 3 tables away, his newspaper hiding the fact that he was watching her too. For 6 months after their divorce, they had unknowingly created the most heartbreaking routine in the city, 2 people desperately missing each other while sitting 15 feet apart, neither brave enough to close the distance. The studio was buzzing with anticipation as Ellen finished her opening dance to Ed Sheeran's Perfect, the irony of the song choice not lost on anyone who knew what was about to unfold. The audience was still energized from the surprise honeymoon giveaway to a couple celebrating their 50th anniversary, and the warm California afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed to promise that this would be one of those episodes that restored faith in love itself. Sarah Collins sat in the green room, nervously adjusting her wedding ring, the one she still wore 18 months after signing divorce papers. At 48, she had the kind of understated beauty that came from years of taking care of others. Soft brown hair that she tucked behind her ears when nervous, gentle blue eyes that held both sadness and hope, and hands that still reached for someone who was no longer there. She wore a simple navy dress that Mike had once said brought out her eyes, though she told herself she'd chosen it purely by coincidence. Sarah had never imagined she would be sitting backstage at the Ellen DeGeneres show. 2 weeks earlier, her sister Emma had surprised her with the news that she'd submitted Sarah's story to the show's Love Lost and Found segment. Sarah had been mortified when Emma confessed to writing a letter about Sarah's secret daily ritual at Morningside Cafe. But Emma had insisted that sometimes love needed a little help finding its way back home. What Sarah didn't know was that her story was only half the picture. Unknown to either sister, Mike's best friend Danny had submitted a nearly identical letter about Mike's own morning routine at the same cafe. When the show's producers realized they had received 2 separate nominations about the same divorced couple, unknowingly pining for each other in the same coffee shop, they knew they had discovered something extraordinary. "Sarah Collins, you're ready in 5 minutes," a production assistant announced. Sarah took a deep breath, touched her wedding ring for luck, and followed the assistant toward the stage. As she walked through the corridors lined with photos of Ellen's most memorable reunions, she wondered if Mike ever thought about their Saturday morning coffee dates, if he missed the way she always stole sips of his latte when she thought he wasn't looking. Ellen's introduction was warm and intriguing. "My next guest is someone who proves that even when love seems lost, it never really goes away. She's been coming to terms with the end of her 25-year marriage, but what she doesn't know is that her story is about to take a turn that will surprise everyone, including her. Please welcome Sarah Collins." The audience applauded as Sarah walked onto the stage, her nervous energy evident but endearing. Ellen greeted her with her signature hug and immediately sensed the mixture of sadness and lingering love radiating from this woman. "Sarah, thank you for being here," Ellen said as they settled onto the familiar white couch. "I understand you were married for 25 years. That's a beautiful, long journey. Can you tell me about your marriage?" Sarah's face softened as she began talking about the life she'd built and lost. "Mike and I met in college. We were both studying education, and we had this dream of changing the world one classroom at a time. We got married right after graduation, bought a little house, taught at the same elementary school for years. We had this perfect little life." Ellen leaned forward with interest. "It sounds like you had something really special. What happened?" Sarah's expression grew complicated, the kind of look that carried years of small disappointments and unspoken resentments. "Life happened, I guess. We got so busy with work, with maintaining our house, with just existing. We stopped talking about dreams and started talking about schedules. We stopped seeing each other and started just coexisting. Ellen could see the pain behind Sarah's composed exterior. And that led to divorce? The divorce was mutual, Sarah said quickly, as if she'd practiced this explanation many times. We both realized we'd grown apart. We thought maybe we'd be happier separated, that we could find ourselves again as individuals. Ellen studied Sarah's expression, noting the way she still wore her wedding ring, the way her voice caught slightly when she said Mike's name. "And are you? Happier?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with emotions she'd been trying to suppress. "I thought I would be. I got my own apartment, started taking art classes, made new friends. I have this independence I haven't had since I was 22. But, Ellen encouraged gently. "But I miss him," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "I miss our Saturday morning coffee dates. I miss the way he'd leave little notes in my lunch bag. I miss having someone to share my day with. I miss being part of a team." The studio had grown noticeably quieter as the audience sensed the depth of Sarah's loss. Ellen leaned forward compassionately. "Sarah, have you told Mike how you feel?" Sarah shook her head quickly. "Oh, no, I couldn't. The divorce was his idea as much as mine. He's probably moved on, probably dating someone new. I don't want to complicate his life or make him feel guilty." Ellen's producer instincts were telling her there was much more to this story. "Sarah, your sister Emma wrote to us about something specific you've been doing since the divorce. Can you tell me about your morning routine?" Sarah's face flushed slightly as she realized what Ellen was referring to. "Oh, that? Emma shouldn't have. It's probably silly." "Nothing about love is silly," Ellen said warmly. "Tell me about Morningside Cafe." Sarah looked down at her hands, clearly embarrassed. "Every morning, I go to this coffee shop called Morningside Cafe. It's where Mike and I used to have our weekend coffee dates. I sit at our old table and I pretend he's going to walk through the door." Ellen's heart was already breaking for this woman. "How long have you been doing this?" 6 months, Sarah admitted quietly. "Every single morning at 8:47 a.m. I order our usual, a medium latte and a blueberry muffin, and I sit at table 7 by the window. I bring a book, but mostly I just remember." The audience was completely silent now, clearly moved by Sarah's honest vulnerability. "And has Mike ever shown up?" Ellen asked gently. "No," Sarah said with a sad smile. "I keep hoping, but no. He's probably forgotten all about our little traditions." Ellen exchanged a meaningful look with her producers in the booth. What happened next would either be the most beautiful reunion or the most awkward moment in television history. "Sarah," Ellen said carefully, "what if I told you that someone else has been going to Morningside Cafe every morning too?" Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" "What if I told you that every morning at 8:52 a.m. someone else walks into that cafe, orders a black coffee with 1 sugar, and sits at table 12, pretending to read a newspaper while watching table 7? Sarah's face went completely white. That's impossible." Ellen stood up and looked toward the stage entrance. "Mike Collins, would you like to come out here?" The audience gasped audibly as Mike Collins walked onto the stage. At 50, he had the kind of solid, dependable appearance that spoke to years of caring for others. Graying hair that Sarah had always loved, running her fingers through, kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the slightly rumpled look of someone who dressed more for comfort than style. He wore a blue button-down shirt that Sarah had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as tears began streaming down her face. "Mike, what are you doing here?" Mike approached slowly, his own eyes filling with tears as he saw his ex-wife for the first time in 2 months. "Sarah, Danny said I was coming on Ellen's show, but he didn't tell me." Ellen watched as the former couple stared at each other, 25 years of shared history playing across their faces. "Mike, Sarah has just been telling us about her morning routine at Morningside Cafe. Sound familiar?" Mike's face crumpled as he realized what Ellen was. Revealing. You've been going there too? Table 7, Sarah whispered. Every morning at 8:47. Table 12, Mike replied, his voice thick with emotion. Every morning at 8:52. Ellen felt tears prickling her own eyes as she watched this revelation unfold. You've both been going to the same cafe at the same time for 6 months, missing each other by minutes. Sarah stood up from the couch, taking a tentative step toward Mike. You've been watching Table 7? Every single day, Mike admitted, hoping you'd show up, hoping I'd have the courage to talk to you if you did. But I was there, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I was right there. Mike pulled off his glasses to wipe his eyes. I know that now. God, Sarah, we've been 15 feet apart all this time, both too scared to bridge the gap. Ellen couldn't contain herself any longer. Okay, I need to know. Do you both still love each other? Sarah and Mike looked at each other, then back at Ellen, then back at each other. I never stopped, Sarah said simply. Neither did I, Mike replied immediately. The divorce was the biggest mistake of my life. Ellen was openly crying now, and the audience erupted in applause. But she held up her hand because she had more surprises in store. Mike, Sarah, I have something to show you, Ellen announced, gesturing toward the large screen behind them. The screen lit up with security camera footage from Morningside Cafe. The timestamp showed various dates over the past 6 months, and the footage had been edited together to show the heartbreaking near misses. Sarah arriving at 8:47, Mike arriving at 8:52, both sitting alone at their respective tables, both glancing toward the door, both leaving within minutes of each other. The final piece of footage showed yesterday morning, Sarah at table 7, Mike at table 12, both of them looking directly at each other's tables without realizing the other was there. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, covering her face with her hands. We were so close. Mike moved toward her instinctively, his protective instincts kicking in as they had for 25 years. Sarah, honey, don't cry. The endearment slipped out naturally, and both of them paused, realizing that some habits die hard. Ellen was barely holding it together herself. The cafe owner, Mrs. Patterson, has been watching this unfold for months. She contacted us after your friends submitted your stories. She said she's never seen anything sadder or more beautiful than watching two people love each other from a distance. Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, walked onto the stage carrying a tray with 2 coffee cups. Sarah, Mike, she said warmly, I've been hoping for months that you two would find each other. I brought your usual orders. She handed Sarah a medium latte and Mike a black coffee with 1 sugar. The simple gesture broke down the last of their defenses. Mike looked at his coffee, then at Sarah, then back at Ellen. I've been wanting to tell you something for 6 months, but I've been too much of a coward. What? Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. I was wrong, Mike said, his voice strong and clear, about everything, about growing apart, about needing space, about being happier alone. I thought independence would make me whole, but all it did was show me that I'm only half a person without you. Sarah set down her coffee with trembling hands. Mike, I've been thinking the same thing. Every single day, I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that I was romanticizing our marriage, but what? But I love you, Sarah said simply. I love the way you leave your socks on the bedroom floor. I love the way you sing off-key in the shower. I love the way you make me laugh even when I'm trying to be serious. I love being your wife. Mike crossed the remaining distance between them and pulled Sarah into his arms. I love you too. I love being your husband. I want to come home. Ellen was sobbing now, along with most of the audience. Oh my God, you guys. This is the most beautiful thing ever. But Ellen wasn't finished with her surprises. Sarah, Mike, I have one more thing. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to tell them? Mrs. Patterson smiled. I took the liberty of calling your friends and family. They're all here. Suddenly, the stage filled with people, Sarah's sister, Emma, Mike's best friend Danny, their former teaching colleagues, their parents, and several other friends and family members, all of whom had been secretly rooting for this reunion. Emma approached her sister with tears in her eyes. "Sarah, we've all been watching you both torture yourselves for months. We knew you belonged together." Danny clapped Mike on the back. "Dude, you've been miserable. We all knew it. We just didn't know how to fix it." Ellen watched as the couple was surrounded by love and support, and she realized this was one of those moments that reminded everyone why love was worth fighting for. "Sarah, Mike," Ellen said, "I have one final surprise for you." She reached into her jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Mrs. Patterson has generously offered to host something very special at Morningside Cafe. If you're willing, we'd like to organize a recommitment ceremony there, at tables 7 and 12, where you've been loving each other from a distance." Sarah and Mike looked at each other, then at their family and friends, then back at Ellen. "Are you asking us to get remarried?" Sarah asked. "I'm asking if you want to make a public commitment to try again," Ellen replied. "To promise each other and everyone who loves you that you're going to fight for your marriage this time." Mike took Sarah's hands in his. "Sarah Collins, will you marry me again?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." 3 months later, Ellen attended the recommitment ceremony at Morningside Cafe. Tables 7 and 12 had been decorated with flowers, and the entire cafe had been transformed into a wedding venue. Sarah wore a simple white dress, Mike wore his best suit, and they exchanged vows that were written from the heart, promises to communicate better, to prioritize their relationship, and to never take each other for granted again. Because sometimes love doesn't end with divorce papers. Sometimes it just goes into hiding, waiting in coffee shops and familiar places, hoping for the courage to try again. And sometimes, with a little help from friends, family, and a talk show host who believes in happy endings, love finds its way back home.